Our Kentwood season after Church 236 was about healing and revelation, wisdom and revelation. There's a season where you get wisdom and you go into strategy. That's wisdom and understanding. And then there's some seasons where you just get wisdom and revelation. The Lord sends you like Elijah. He sends you to the brook. He sits you down. He feeds you through the ravens. You drink from the brook and you relax. You have a conversation with the Lord. It's a time for revelation. It's your own version of seminary. Seasons of wisdom and revelation, moments of wisdom and revelation, seasons of wisdom and understanding, moments of wisdom and understanding. That's what Kentwood was for us. And I circle back all the way several years prior to Kentwood. Remember this, right? My face recognition is not on. Let's turn it on. Do you remember this chart right here? Sometimes the Lord is interweaving various seasons with themselves. The season you're in right now may have something, it may be a play or an extension of, or a fulfillment of something God said 8 years ago, 10 years ago, 2 years ago. When I received the baptism of the Spirit in 1996 at Willow Bend Church, when I was there at that time, they rejected me. I received it at a prayer meeting, March 9th, 1996. I went back to church. I shared it with a bunch of people that I knew. Some of them rejected it. Some of them embraced it. The ones that embraced it, they left Willow Bend as well on their own. They weren't rejected the way I was. They weren't ignored, but they just sort of politely slipped out. And they went to a church that we're going to call Southside Church. It's not the name of it, but that's where they went. And it was a spirit-filled church that the leadership and the people that went there, I think there was 50, 70 people. They were also all coming into the baptism of the Spirit, the gifts of the Spirit, deliverance, severing generational curses. They were entering into what you read about in the book of Acts, people being healed from sickness and infirmity. That church, the senior pastor of that church had a background in the Southern Baptist movement. He had been a pastor at one of the largest Baptist churches in Dallas, on staff there. Somewhere along the way, he was baptized in the Spirit. Somewhere along the way, he decided to start his own church. The families that I was congregating with, that I was close to, they went to his church. And I kind of sort of casually followed them over there for some of their meetings. I enjoyed thoroughly getting to know these people. But the Lord ended up leading me to Midland, Texas. He spoke to me and told me to move to Midland, Texas, where I was making a lot of contacts in the ministry, a lot of contacts in various relationships. And then subsequently, he would move me from Midland to Albuquerque. So I moved away for several years. I moved away to New Mexico, to Midland, and then to New Mexico for like 4 years, 5 years, and no, 4 years. And then I moved back to Texas because I got a corporate relocation with the Olive Garden. And we had our Church 236 experience. Then we went over to Kentwood. We're in our season of recovery. We're in our season of revelation. While my old friends from Willow Bend, from way back then, are still at Southside Church. By this time, I believe there had been 8 years had transpired, 7 or 8 years. No, it was 7 years. There's a storm blowing in, so if you hear that, that's what that is. We were living in Kentwood. We had been there maybe 30 days. And I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, what do we do for fellowship? I mean, we're over here on the east side of Fort Worth. Our kids are going to school right down the street. You're talking to me about the spirit of Jezebel. You're giving me this Graham Cook tape. I'm still studying and praying every day. I'm working in the remodeling business and real estate. My wife is working for OTR. Where do we go from here? And in looking around, I could just see that that was not where we were going to settle down. And I remember one day I was taking a shower. It's funny how God always talks to you when you're in the bathroom. I'm in the shower and I heard the Lord say, I'm going to call him Bob. I heard the Lord say Bob's name to me. Bob was one of my original friends from Willow Bend that was married, that had kids. I heard him say his name. Well, remember, they're still at Southside Church in the North Dallas area. They've been there since 1996. It's now 2003, so they've been there for 7 years. And I just called him up and I said, I'm going to have to write this down. Bob, and we'll call him Bob and Susan. I called Bob up, friend of mine, love him like family. Just his wife was kind of like my sister. I was just very close to them for a long period of time. Would have stayed in better contact with them had we had cell phones. Facebook didn't exist back then. I called him up and I said, God just spoke your name to me. And I feel like maybe we're moving in your direction. He said, come on. So the following Sunday, piled my wife and two boys in the car, in the minivan. We trucked it on up to, I think it was in Richardson. And I remember we got the warmest reception that we could have gotten. It was a breath of fresh air because we had just come out of that season we were in Church 236. And we were still healing, and these people helped us to heal just by loving us, just by seeing old friends that we had not seen in several years. Their kids had grown up. Our kids had been born. Joseph had been born. They had not met Christine yet. They met Christine for the first time. The last time they saw me, I was single. And here I pull up in a minivan with a wife and a couple of boys. And I believe Christine was pregnant with Joel at that point, or was about to be. And I just remember feeling like I landed in we as a family just landed in a great place. The elders of the church, one of them, he came up and just embraced me and said, Jay, is this your wife? And I said, yes, it is. And he just had the biggest smile on his face. They were so happy to see me, so happy to meet Christine, so happy to see our boys and to meet our boys for the first time. And it just felt like heaven. And so I looked at Christine after that Sunday and I said, this is the direction the Lord's moving us in. When this school year is over, this is where we're going to move up here. The Lord is moving us. I mean, we continued to pray about it, but it's just the signs were everywhere. So we let the boys finish out that school year. And in the interim, we were attending Wednesday night meetings at Southside Church. for the youth. That's when the youth meetings happen, the youth ministry. Kevin was about to be going into high school. And what was cool about it was when Kevin and I would jump in the truck and drive from East Fort Worth all the way up to where this church was located, we could catch the HOV lanes on the highways, the busy highways during rush hour traffic that you hit in the mid cities going all the way through Dallas up 635, LBJ, all the going up 75. We were hitting all the HOV. We could use HOV lanes. So we could get there fast. And it was just like we were being carried on eagle's wings again. Just like he had done from Benbrook to Kentwood on the east side, he was carrying us on eagle's wings again. And I would go to these youth meetings with Kevin, and my wife and Joseph would be at home. And I would just stand in the back while the youth meetings were going on in the sanctuary. I wasn't stepping forward. I just stepped way to the back, sat back there. Ministry time was happening. They didn't have a youth pastor. So they had all these people kind of filling in the preaching. And the senior pastor, we're going to call him Scott. I'm having to write all these names down. Scott walked up to me in the middle of one of these meetings, and he said, when the ministry time starts and the altar calls happen and we pray over these kids, if you want to go down to the front and minister to these kids, you go right ahead. He opened up the door and said, go. And I thanked him and I said, yes, sir. If I feel led, I'll go down there. He wanted to have lunch with me. We met at Jason's Deli. I sat down with him. He asked me what was going on, where we'd been, what we'd been up to. I hadn't seen him in 7 years. So I sat down with him and I just told him everything that happened at Church 236. Not everything, but skeletal form. I gave him about a 5-minute breakdown. And he looked at me and he said, you're kidding me. He said, who are these people you're having problems with? The power brokers of the church? That's what he said. Exactly. And I said, well, something like that. You know, it's hard to really convey a 1.5 year long experience in one lunch. It's just, and even then, you don't know if people believe you or not. So I just gave him a brief breakdown of it. I didn't try to hide anything from him. I told him if he had questions, please ask. And he didn't seem to faze him. It didn't seem to raise any red flags with him. Maybe it did and he just didn't tell me. I don't know. So we continued to get very involved in the youth program. In the following spring, going into summer, we built a house up in the McKinney area. We moved up there over the summer the following year. And we got very involved in this church. Specifically, there was in the fall of the following year, which now you're looking at 2005, I think. There was a ministry camp that the youth were about to go to in East Texas called Ron Lutz Extreme Camp, LUCE. Ron, LUCE, Extreme Camps. And it's just a youth ministry camp that all the kids go to once or twice a year. And they bring in all these big bands and they have, ministers come in and minister to the kids. And youth groups come from all over the state. Multiple states around. And I felt like before this thing happened, I felt like I was going to get invited to go. I felt like I was supposed to go with my son and with the youth ministry to this camp. But I didn't say anything to anybody. I didn't say anything to the ministry leaders in the church. I think I told Christine, and that was it. And then one Sunday, about, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 weeks before we're supposed to go, the senior pastor of the church and the main elder I told you about that welcomed Christine and I in, they both came up to me and said, "We want to ask you to do something for us." I said, "Sure, what?" And he said, "We want you to escort the youth ministry to this Ron Luce extreme camp. Would you consider going?" And I said to them both right there, I said, it's funny. I felt like I was going to be going to this, but I'm just going to pray about it another day or so just to make sure this is the Lord. I'm going to ask him one more time, and I'll have you an answer next time I see you. So I just felt like the Lord gave me the peace to go. And I ended up going with this youth group to this Ron Lutz extreme camp. Kevin's involvement in the youth ministry was the access door by which I would come in the Lord and be allowed to enter into this congregation from a ministry standpoint. Christine is now pregnant with Joel. She also works from home probably 30 or 40 hours a week as a research reporter for an investment firm. So her plate is full. She's really not much involved in the ministry, except coming alongside me in the youth group. But Kevin's involvement as a freshman in high school, now going to Lucas Christian Academy, and now us being involved in Southside Church, would be the door that the Lord was going to use to open. I was going to walk through this door, and this would be the process by which the Lord would have me start ministering inside this church. So I'm going to cut it off there. I'm going to wait for this storm to pass because it's getting loud. And I'm going to start another video, and I'm going to tell you what happened at the Ron Luce Extreme Camp and how the dominoes just continued to fall and fall and fall for probably the next year. I'll cover it in the next video.